Jeff is founder and managing member of Redwood Capital LLC, a private real estate investment and asset management firm that helps clients achieve superior risk-adjusted returns through the acquisition of value-add self-storage asset nationwide. Jeff, CCIM, has been in commercial real estate and finance for the last 20 years and worked as a consultant as an equity investor and as a source for debt financing, and has funded over $100 million in commercial and business loans. Mr. Ogan brings a unique perspective, having been both a real estate investor, asset manager, developer, business owner, and a commercial banker.
Yeah.
Jeff Ogan.
Thank you very much. Yay. Welcome. So this is going to be a real broad-based overview of the self-storage market. If you have questions along the ways, just go ahead and raise your hand. Ask the question. That way we don't have to wait to the end. And if you want to go off in a little rabbit hole and we dig deep into the thing, then by all means, we could do that. So I'm going to be covering 6 parts today. Here, I'll go back up. Let's see if this works here. So basically, I'm going to be going over about 6 sections. Why invest in self-storage, the process of acquiring self-storage facilities, financing them, and the different types of financing, creative financing as well as traditional bank financing. None of this is going to be a deep dive, so it's a broad-based. Each of these sections I could really do quite an hour on by itself. Maximizing revenues, market trends right now that I see within last year and this year and next year is going forward, and then managing key expenses and stuff like that. So if you actually get into it, some of that will apply to both self-storage as well as if you guys have individual residential real estate, because I'm going to touch on a couple areas where expenses have been out of whack, I think. That's a facility we own in Tennessee. It's Clarksville, Tennessee, Cherryville Station. So if we wanted to get in there. So basically one of the reasons people really like self-storage is that it's really recession resistant. I want to say recession resistance because of the fact that there's been a huge transition over the last literally 10 years in self-storage. It was never considered an institutional investment probably about 5 to 10 years ago. But the returns were so good because you had a lot of mom and pop operators. So literally 10 years ago, you had 90% of the market was not institutional. It was only 10% was institutional. 90% of the market was owned by single owner operators. But a lot of them, mom and pop started them themselves, owned them for 10 or 20 years, but they never ran it as a business. They really ran it as an ATM machine because they'd get the things filled up and they'd just collect the money. Because it really is a business. There's a lot of back-end stuff that you have to do. There's a lot of businessy things that you have to take care of. If you got auctions you got to do, we've got auctions that we've got coming up on one of the facilities we own. So there's a lot of things that they didn't actually apply to the business. And so what happened was a lot of people like yourself and investors at a higher level started to buy the facilities because they saw the returns that they were getting. So then they started sucking up a lot of the inventory. And then what happened was they saw that the possibilities of really what's going on, and then you've had some major institutions or major institutional investors. I'm sure you know them: Extra Space Storage, Public Storage, and there's 1 or 2 other huge behemoths. But then again, they run massive facilities to make it for their economies of scale to really be working. So literally over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of shifting. We're still in that transitionary period. 80 to 85% of the market right now is still owned by small mom and pop owners. But they're starting to get to a point where they're aging out. They're getting their 70s, 80s. They've owned it for 10 or 15 years. And they want to get away from it because they don't want to rent it no more. They don't want to have to take the time to do it. And they're also getting phone calls from everybody in the world going, hey, you want to sell it? So there's still a huge opportunity out there for those facilities to be able to buy them, but you have to buy them right, and we'll dig into that a little bit later in the sense that it is. And so a lot of times what happens when you hit a recessionary period, people run into challenges of their lives, death, divorce, they could say the 5 Ds, disaster, all kind of things. And so what happens, what's the first thing you do? If you're losing a house, because I don't know what the foreclosure rate is now, but start losing your house, or you go through a divorce, what do we got to do? Are you getting ready to move? I need a storage facility. So a lot of times people will take their stuff, put it in a storage facility, and then start renting it out and running it. In some of the facilities we bought, we've got people that have been there for literally 10 plus years. So a lot of times they just keep paying for it, paying for it, and pay for it. As long as it's on auto debit, they're good to go. And you like that because the money's coming in, but the problem is they don't raise the rates. So that's where the opportunity lies on the value adds. So in comparison to low overhead, it's about 35% is the cost to actually operate a facility. That's where you should be targeting as far as your net operating income is concerned, is about 35%. Apartments are a lot higher. They're a lot different. Plus the transition to be able to lease a facility in an apartment or a house, how long does that usually take to be able to lease when you get somebody that moves out to moves in? How long is that usually, what's the turnover time? 6 weeks?
6 weeks.
Yeah, because you want to be right on it, right? Yeah. So with a self-storage facility, quite literally, I can have somebody move out today and rent it tomorrow if I have the demand for it. Now, sometimes you also have it sitting. So in the sense of you're looking at the percentage of occupancy for the entire facility. And so it's in that sense, it's very similar to like hospitality, hotels and stuff like that. You want to look at the percentage of occupancy of what it's actually running. So 30 to 35%. If you've got like office space like this, you've got to build in the TIs. If you've got warehouse, you've got a little bit more low overhead. But traditionally, managing them has been a lot more traditionally. But it is a business in the sense that it's actually, to a degree, a retail business that you're actually running, similar to a hospitality hotel, stuff like that, as opposed to a traditional, I just own this building, rent it out, and go. So a lot of times it is very, very scalable. You're looking for cash flow on the things. That's where the key is to be able to buy the facilities. You want to be able to, that's why we buy them nationwide. That's why we're not necessarily looking at specific markets per se. We do a market study to determine, population, because you want to see what's driving demand in that market. Because I believe it's demand and supply, not supply and demand. So you want to see how much demand. The challenge with that is over the last, 5-10 years, you got a lot of institutional investors, you got a lot of people who go, oh, it's cheaper for me to build than it is for me to be able to go and, buy the facilities, because, a couple of years ago when they were trying to buy them at 5 caps and 4 caps, the prices were out of whack and they just didn't make the economies of scale. And we'll dig in a little bit on the pro forma later, because underwriting right now is critical. We actually walked away from a few deals last year because of the fact that the underwriting that we did, we shifted our underwriting in the middle of the year and changed it. So we went back to them and said, it's not worth the price that you guys are, that you want it for, the price that we put it under contract for. So we actually changed it. So that's where the shifting opportunities are coming, is that you've got a lot of older people that have owned them for years and years and years, and then they're getting to a point where, something's going to happen, right? Somebody's in their 80s, they may live till their 90s and 100s, which is phenomenal and wonderful, and they should, but you get to the point where at some point you want to slow down, you want to shift your life, you want to go in a different direction, maybe take more time off. So there's still a lot of facilities out there that are mom and pop owned that have the opportunity to be a value add. It's a question of what your scale is, and I may pull up a couple here that were sent to me today, and we can do a comparison. So really within my industrial trends and stuff like that, is there's an increase in urbanization, there's an increase in the smaller homes, there's a significant increase in shifting trends where people are buying smaller homes, but they still want to keep on to their stuff, right? So a lot of times they look at it as an extra garage, or they look at it as an extra storage space, and they look at it as just part of being their home, an extension of, as opposed to, I'm just going to put everything in and do it. There's been a little bit of a mind shift there, and then depending on if they live in apartments or if they live in a house and stuff like that, there's been a lot of different shifts and changes. There's actually places in San Francisco that literally rent about a place like that, that's actually wine coolers for wine. So if you have like your own wine collection, we had a guy that came to us one time and did a whole presentation on he was trying to build them in San Francisco, and the rental rates on those things is just crazy. But I mean, you also have maintenance of them, and you've got the air conditioning and all the different things that go into it. But I mean, if somebody's willing to pay $100 to $200 a month to store their wine, that's a phenomenal opportunity there, that as long as the scales match. Now, also, some of the other things, the other trends that I've noticed is the RV storage. So, a lot of homeowners association, HOAs, do not allow you to park your RVs next to your house anymore, right? Or park them on the street, or park trailers, or they have all kinds of rules and regulations. If you've ever lived in an HOA, you get the letters. I used to live in one, and I did. And so a lot of people are looking, okay, I don't want to store there. Now so they're parking it off site. So I know a couple of facilities that happen to be here in Reno where you can actually park your RVs. Usually they're higher value RVs, but for $750 a month, the guy takes care of everything. Cleans it, parks it for you, gets it all washed, gets it all gassed up, and then if you want it parked at a certain location, he'll take it out to the campsite, and all you have to do is show up and walk into your RV. So they have services like that. They also do that with the boats too. So, guy down in Dayton and Carson, you have a boat that's licensed to go up in Lake Tahoe. You can just go up there. You call them up. Hey, we want it at this dock. We want to show up at that time. Now those are value add services, and it's a business, and they make really good money. But I mean, obviously, your clientele for that is Mark Zuckerberg, not some of us, right? So there's been a lot of changes towards it, and they're actually getting facilities set up now where it's just exclusively RVs or exclusively boats. There's a facility I seen down in Florida that we looked at. It was actually kind of neat because it was stacked up by like a garage where you put the boats in and they rack it up, and so you could actually park the boats in there. It's actually pretty neat. But those are also, the cost on those is running them going to be a lot higher to do that. Businesses are actually required by who nowadays? The government, to retain records. Or do you have to retain records on your stuff? How long?
7 years.
7 years is usually about the terms that I heard. Real estate agents, you guys got to save it for about 7 years too on transactions. Mortgage, anybody a mortgage agent here? No? Okay. Mortgages, they got to keep them for 7 years or something like that. Pharmacies, all kinds of businesses now are required to keep records because they have the ability to go back and audit you for up to 7 years and come back and say, hey, where's the record? Oh, I don't have it. Okay, good. You owe us an extra $10,000, $20,000, right? And then rental rates only in key markets, because I seen it go up by 10% last year, but I also seen when they went up by 10%, I also saw the demand drop down on it. Because usually the traditional thing is if you raise it by 3 to 5% a year, usually you can retain those people and keep them along. When you start bumping them like some of the majors do, where every 3 months they're doing a rate increase, every 3 months they do a rate increase, you have a lot of turnover. So that takes marketing, advertising, and all that stuff, and that costs money. But that's their business model. They want to get rates up to a certain percentages. So a lot of times in certain markets, the other thing is that with development that's been happening over literally the last years, it's a lot of people have seen the economies of scale of storage, so a lot of them are going in, hey, we'll just build and get this thing up and operational. Well, what's been happening is you get an overbuild of supply. I've never seen a developer overbuild themselves, have you? Apartments, anything like that. So you're getting a lot more people who are developing in areas. So some of the cities are actually backing up a little bit and saying, okay, so the key ratio for building is typically what they call a per capita rate. Per capita rate is for every individual that lives within this area, which is a 3 to 5 mile, 10 mile radius, you look at how many square feet per person. 4 and 5, that means they have 5 square feet of storage for every person in that area. 10 square feet. 17 square feet. And it goes up. So one of the key factors that we look at all the times is what is the supply, and what's the demand. Is it that you can look in some areas and see that there's a demand for 20 square feet per an area, right? And so you can maintain rates. But if you're going into an area and let's say it's the facility that you're buying is at like a 12 or 14 or 15%, you really want to understand that market because there's a lot of competition is really what it boils down to. And so you want to know because people are very selective in it because it's not a value add service in the sense that it's a homogeneous service, right? Hey, I need a storage space. What do? You go online and look. And I'll dig into that later, but it's a homogeneous service. I just need a storage space. Now, where the value add is when they need the RVs or they want climate controlled or they need some other stuff because they're storing computers or whatever else they're storing. That's when you start getting into the other things. But a lot of times, most people base it on really 2 key factors: price and location. How close is it to me? Down the street, or is it across town? Or do I need to park it over there because of the fact that, I'm moving, right? So, once again, also the trend towards smaller homes. Builders, the cost to build nowadays is running, I've heard it anywhere from $250 a square foot up to going up from there, which is pretty expensive because then it pushes up the price to build a house, right? So, all right, here's the fun stuff. Buying them. Yay! All right. So, first thing that we always look at is evaluating location. We always want to know our market. So, the first thing that we look at is what is the market, where it's located, and we'll do a 3, 5, and 10 mile radius because that's going to be 80 to 90% of your market unless you get something that's kind of a unique creature. Now, a unique creature is Reno, right? Reno has a high demand for space, but part of it is because what you do is you have a thing that happens every August, which is called Burning Man. So, with Burning Man, you literally have facilities out here that have people who go up to Burning Man, anywhere from all over the world, take all their stuff and they park it here for the year and just leave it. So then they show up about 2 weeks before, they go to their storage unit, they take their stuff and then they take it out to Burning Man, and then after they're done, they come back and they park it again. So that's kind of a unique little bit of a market. In Florida, in the Panhandle, down in Panama City in that area, I know one guy that owns a facility down there, and he built it to a Cat level 5 hurricane level because I don't know if you've noticed, but they sometimes have hurricane issues in the Gulf of America. And so he built it to a level of 5 and then advertised it at that. And so what happened was he found some of the people that were coming in to rent from him were renting it just as a backup so that they can have it there in case there was a hurricane. So they would pay for the facility, not have anything in it, and then if a hurricane come in, they'd grab their valuables and stuff and then take it down and put it in their storage unit. If you got enough money, what does it matter if I'm paying for a year's supply of it? I just want to have that ability because he noticed what happened was every time, there was a warning, all the vacant spaces that he had would be gone, So that was kind of an interesting thing. Assessing the property condition, location. Me personally would not buy anything with a population below 20,000. So the criteria that we have and that I use, they got to have at least 20,000 in population, and you have to have 3 major industries in the area. Manufacturing, something that were their key industries in the area where they're exporting stuff, not service businesses. So we take out government and we take out medical because those are service businesses that are a reflection of it. So we look for, like we were looking at a facility down in Louisiana, and they do manufacturing down there, and it's huge oil and gas for the area. So there's a lot of fluctuation on the oil and gas market because of the fact that they do manufacturing there, they do installation, they do all kinds of stuff. So we always look for the 3 criterias on that. So we will go into major MSAs, but if you go into a major MSA, you're going to compete against extra space storage or public storage or any of those guys. And not that necessarily that's a bad thing. It's just you got to be aware of it. Problem with that is sometimes I've seen if they want to fill up their space, they can drop their shorts all the way down to nothing, fill it up, pull them out of you, and then they end up with them. So I've seen them where they've dropped rates long enough to really put you in trouble. And if you don't do your capital stack right, that can put you in a lot of trouble. And so one of the things you want to really do that. Identifying off-market deals versus listed properties. A lot of deals out there by brokers and stuff like that, and I'm going to dig in this later about pro formas and stuff like that with the listed properties. But typically, the brokers are looking at future value, and they're trying to sell you at the future value of what you can get to. But then again, they want you to pay them for that future value. They don't want you to, pay it on historical. They want you to have to pay them for it so that they get it and they extract the value out of it. All right? So, off-market deals, it's the same thing with looking for off-market deals in real estate. You guys have like a phone calling system? Calls people all the time. I get calls like that all the time. Hey, you want to sell your homes? You want to sell your houses? I usually turn it around on them and ask them if they have any self-storage facilities for sale. And they get lost and befuddled by that question sometimes. Most of them do. Every once in a while you get one that's engaged and they're like, oh, I don't know, let me have somebody talk to you. Okay, I don't care, I'll talk to anybody. So it doesn't matter. But, identifying off-market properties is basically just, looking for those facilities. There's a couple of different ways to do it. One, people say, oh, go to Google all the ones in that area and pull them up and then start calling them. I don't agree with that. Because you know why? Google, if it's on Google, then they've got some degree of sophistication and some degree of marketing that they're actually trying to drive in customers. I'm looking for the one that doesn't have a website, that doesn't have Google, that doesn't have those things, because that's the one that the guy's been owning for a long time that's going to be a management value add. So I want to avoid those ones. So a lot of times your best bet really is I go to the title company, I pull up all the properties that are designated by the city with that zoning, or they're designated by the city for the tax authorities, and we pull that up, and then what we do is we skip trace them and back into them and get the phone numbers, and we make phone calls, and I have an assistant that makes phone calls for me and looks for leads across the nation. We usually target different things. And then there is a number of them out there that are wholesalers. So we work with a lot of wholesalers too. But I've noticed over the last couple of years, the wholesalers have gotten to the point where they're acting just like brokers. Oh, it's a wholesale deal. Well, not the way you calculated the income and stuff like that. It's not a wholesale deal. All right? And then historical versus pro forma. We're going to get into that. Okay. So, really, you want to be buying the property on historical value. You want to look backwards. Primarily because of the fact that you're looking at, you're really buying a cash flowing item, right? It's an investment. And you want to look backwards and see what it's actually the true cash flow that it's producing. So what you want to do is you want to get copies of their last couple of years management reports. You want to, if you can, get copies of their taxes and look and see what they've done with their taxes, how much expenses they've put through. We were looking at one today, and the guy, it's a very small facility, but he put like $30,000 of truck and car expenses. So every time he drove there. Some of the things that we've done in the past is a direct purchase where we're buying it from sometimes, and sometimes people, well, I don't know what I want to do. Okay, are you opened up to a partnership? Are you opened up to, maybe I don't want to deal with the thing, but I don't necessarily want to sell it, and I want to get the best value out of it. Okay, how about this? What we do is we go into a contract, we'll buy it from you as a partner, but we're going to run it for the next 3 years. We'll get the rates where it needs to be, and then we'll buy it at that price. But we're going to keep it for 2 to 3 years and get it to where it needs to be, and then we'll buy it from you. So we do a partnership with you on the sale of it. So that way we've got the property tied up, and then we can actually see how it's managed. and then come in and bring in our management systems. So, evaluating cap rates and ROI, return on equity. We're going to dig into that a little bit later, but on a cap rate, we'll talk about that. Where are real cap rates right now? For major markets, it's probably 6. If it's in secondary, tertiary markets, it's going to be 7 to 8, maybe 9. Tertiary markets where it's really small, it's going to need to be 10. So if they're selling it on a projected income or a tax-based cap rate return of 6%, and your cost of capital is going to be 8, you've got a negative cash flow item. You should not be buying any facility that's going to be greater than your cost of capital, both equity and debt. You should never do that, all right? Oh, negotiating tips. I always ask them where they get their value. So how did you come up with that value? What was it based on? Oh, I just picked a figure out of the air and just kind of throw it up there, and I thought, or somebody told me. Somebody said, oh, that could be worth $2 million. Okay, I'll take $2 million for it. And that's why you got to really do your analysis on the thing to really understand what the thing is. The other thing I ask them is, how do you classify it? Is an A facility a B facility or a C facility? A-class facilities are the really nice ones. 4 stories, elevators, carts, all that kind of stuff. That's not going to compare to a mom and pop little small place. That's 10,000 square feet, no fence, drive-ups, stuff like that. That's more of a C facility. It depends on the size of it, and how old is it. So you really want to kind of get them to tell you how they're getting the value and things of that nature. So where are we at? Oh, there we go. Yep. Okay. So, like I said, we buy on cash flow. This is the income statement for the basics of any of the facilities and stuff like that, right? So, potential rental income is 100%. You got 100 units. They're all 10 by 10s. You rent them for $10, $1,000 a month, 1,000 times, $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year. But that's fully leased up. Have you ever had apartments completely full, 100% leased up all the time? Anybody else has rentals here? No? Yes? Yeah? Ever had 100%? Never? Me either. Yeah, doesn't happen. But if you're at 100%, that it does provide the opportunity, because that's when you can bump up rates. But so you take out your vacancy loss, you take out your vacancy factors or whatever it is, say 10%, brings you down to 120,000. That's your effective rental income. All right. How much you're going to actually bring in? What are you actually bringing into your thing? That's why you want to look backwards on it, because what a broker will do is he's going to take it and go, oh, the new rates are actually $120 a square foot, or $120 a unit, not $100 a unit, right? Okay, well, where have you been at? Well, we've actually only been at 80, right? So, but you'll have the opportunity to get up to 120. Well, if you guys can't get it up, what makes you think I can do it, right? So then what you want to look at is the real income, and then you add on all the auxiliary stuff. All the auxiliary stuff is insurance, which adds a lot to your bottom line, because the split's usually $10. So you get 70, they get 30, so you'd end up with $7. So we require tenant insurance on all our facilities for the people. That's insuring their content. That way, if they have something happens there or something happens with them, you just go to that and collect it. Some of them have like little retail stores, boxes, and all kinds of stuff. Nice to have. It's not worth it. I don't personally think so. Other ones are U-Haul. U-Haul is you can drop off, pick up, and stuff like that. Now, I don't personally like U-Haul because of the fact that they require you to use their management systems to run the facility. So there's a little bit of fee for that, and then they charge for it. So you're tied in with them if you want to do that. So I don't like that. The other one that we just recently started doing is truck parking. There's called a truck parking club. Truck parking club is where nationwide there's issues with parking your trucks because it has to be in designated spaces. So somebody started up an app where what they do is that you can put your property in there, guys from the trucks can come and park their trucks. So any kind of their commercial trucks, they need to park it overnight for a day, a week, a year. You know, they just need to park it overnight. So they'll go into a city. You know, they can't park it at the motel, so they got to go park it over there. So we actually got that set up at one of our facilities. The very first night we had it open, somebody rented it from us for like 3 weeks. I was like, this is great. I love this. It actually worked out really well because the fees on those are actually a little bit higher than if they just came in and wanted to park the truck on a regular basis. So, gross operating income, operating expenses, like I said, should be about 35% of your operating income on that. Traditionally, now when you first take over a facility and when you buy it, right, remember the historical thing? Your expenses, your income's going to be a little bit lower, but if you're trying to lease up, what are you doing? Oh, the guy doesn't have any marketing. Oh, okay, great, that's wonderful, but that means I got to go spend marketing money, right? I got to go out and start marketing this darn thing to actually operate the facility. So what happens then is my expenses start going way up, you know, and depending on how much you have to spend on every facility to be able to lease it up, there's a lag time there that takes where you have to hit your percentages of occupancy. At the end of the day, you end up with an OI, right? That's the money in your pocket before debt service, right? So that's where everybody wants to be, right? Net operating income. Yay, right? Because net operating income determines value, right? So, $100, you know, you make $10,000. Let me see my phone real quick. Right? It's a quick calculation. All right. We'll keep the number simple, right? $10,000 net income, right? Divided by a 9 cap, you get $110,000-ish. So that's also true for your homes that you're renting on, your net income. Think about it. What's your cap rate on that? Well, everybody wants to sell on cap rate. Well, cap rates are kind of a fudgeable thing because of the fact that it's, you know, is it based on historical? Is it based on future performance? And me going out and selling my property, I want as low of a cap rate as possible. Them coming in and buying, I want as high a cap rate as possible. So a lot of times there's a lot of dickering back and forth on that sort of stuff, right? So it basically determines the value of the property. Yay! And then this is the other these are the other calculations that we kind of go through. These are the basic ones of commercial finance. Basically, what you're looking at is to derive income. It's rate, cap rate type value. If it's the cap rate you're looking for, it's the income divided by the value. And if you want value, income divided by your cap rate, right? So those are the basics of really just underwriting. There's a lot more underwriting that goes into the thing than just that, but those are the basic assumptions. Here's the basic 6 assumptions on pro formas. And this is where we kind of tear them apart a lot because of the fact that a lot of times they're on projected rents. Hey, you can get this one out on the market. The market says you can get it for $1.50 a square foot. Okay, well, when I pulled it up and looked at it, it was 90 cents a square foot. What's the difference? There's no difference. Well, maybe that $1.50 is including climate control. This is not a climate control facility, right? Doesn't have security, doesn't have, any marketing, doesn't have anything, So, vacancy. A lot of times the vacancy is like, right? Are they actually using real vacancy? Or are they actually just going, oh, the market says it's 5%. Usually with a facility, we're looking at vacancies, they're typically about 15%. It should be, if it's operating efficiently, 15% is about where it's usually at, vacancy rate. So, all right. And then a lot of times there's the income growth. What they do is they just automatically, next year you're going to be able to grow it, your fee income and be able to increase it by 5% every year over the next 5 years. So we're going to be good. Well, has that always been true of rents? Right? No, it's not true of rents at all, right? The other one is a lot of times they do expense growth, but the expense growth is maybe 2%. I'd love to have only 2% a year over year, on your increase on expenses because of the fact that expenses are one of those, some of them are fungible that you can actually control, and some of them are not. And I'll talk about that later in regards to what expenses are going to be key critical ones that you really, really want to dig into. Right? And then a lot of times they were underwriting at lower interest rates. What are interest rates today? Right? So if you're underwriting the deal and it's at 5% interest rate and it's a great deal, well, if it goes up to 8%, what are you at? You're in trouble. There's some things you're going to have to deal with there. Your cost of capital, your cost of mortgage is going to be way up there, and it's going to affect you. So there's a lot of apartment buildings. No disrespect to him, but I think there's a lot of apartment buildings that were underwritten a few years ago. Matter of fact, I had a conversation with today. Somebody called me on an apartment building. Said, hey, we couldn't get the rates increased, so we're not getting the LTVs, And so the lenders are going, I don't think I'm going to lend on this one anymore. We're going to call the note. So there's a lot of there'll be opportunities for that for people that want to come in with equity injections on that. But you gotta make sure you gotta underwrite them correctly. So there's a lot of that's happening. And then the exit cap rate, is it a revision or is it terminal? Is it one that they actually did the numbers on, or is it once again, yay! Oh, look, we're at 6. We're gonna do great. All right. Here's the truth on underwriting. Seller gets the benefit of the value add. That's where I was talking about before. Is it based on historical or is it based on performance? Right? A lot of times you look at the notes. I can show you one here that they actually sent me today. I was going to pull it up. I'm afraid to though. Well, because of the fact that I think we'll lose the thing. Yeah, I was going to see. But it's based on the future value. Okay, I got a unit here that we're only collecting $80 for a 10 by 10, but he says the market's $100. Okay, great. I'm going to underwrite it at $100 and do the future projected value of the thing. Well, I got to go get that value. I got to get it from $80 to $100, not them. But they want me to pay them for that $100 value, right? So that's really critical nowadays, especially over the last couple of years. Like I said, last year, we completely changed our underwriting model and walked away from a couple of deals. You're paying the seller for the right to make the improvements, and you are taking all the risk. Who's taking all the risk? You are, right? I got to bring in marketing. I got to bring in, all the management systems. I got to add a gate. I got to add a fence, like security. I got to get the marketing so I can get this thing filled up so I can get it at $100 a square foot. Well, that's going to cost me time, money, and effort, right? But I'm taking all the risk, not them, right? You're hoping for the appreciation. A lot of times, it's a hope and a win nowadays. Oh, don't worry. Real estate's gone up over every year for the last 10, 20 years, right? Right? It's gone up every year. I've seen markets, Florida, 20%. It's down 20% right now. Texas is down 5 to 6%. Any other markets that you guys know of? No? Ohio is one of the ones I think that's down too, although they've had a lot of demand for it. It's kind of a funky market. But it's on the if-come basis. Yay, we're gonna get there, right? You're hoping that there works during the expansion cycle, but the market has changed and this gradually not continue to be profitable. In other words, what's going on right now is they're trying to price these properties as if it was 2002 or 22, right? Everything's wonderful. We're not having any issues. We're pricing it at 2022. Guess what? The market's changed. It's completely different right now. It's not the same as it used to be. So and as you're doing the expansion and as you're doing the work to get there, the market can still shift and change, right? I don't know if you've heard of this thing with tariffs with China. And I think the economy is going to get significantly better over the next, but we're going to go through a little bit of a bumpy period right now. So, and with the expansion, what I noticed historically last year, there was a lot of, I don't want to say stagnation, but there was a lot of people that were just like, even businesses were like that. They just didn't want to invest money. They didn't want to invest changes. They didn't want to take the risk because they were afraid that if they took the risk that it wasn't going to pay out, and everybody wanted to wait till after the election, right? All right, so when you're doing the underwriting, you really got to go back to the basics, right? It must be cash flowing historically. It needs to be. You should buy it based on it's got a cash flow, right? What's the old slang term? Cash flow is king, right? Debt must be permanent. You have to look at long-term debt. Don't look at short-term bridge lending, right? Nothing personal again. But the short-term debt, hey, we're just going to get in. We're going to get ownership. Once we get it, we'll get it stabilized. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go get permanent financing. Well, that was everybody's plan, 3 to 5 years ago? That was the plan for apartment buildings. That was the plan for self-storage. That was plans for a lot of other places. Where are they at now? Now, self-storage is not as bad as apartments, but, it's got it. You have to look at if you can get it fixed. Now, a lot of commercial lenders are not going to want to give you a fixed debt. But, if it's bridge, make sure it's as low as possible and interest only. And make sure that you have the ability to extend it. That would be my only recommendations if that's the only way to do a deal. Lenders, banks, if you go to banks for financing, they're not the speculators. They're not the ones that are the risk takers. They're not going to be the ones that are going to come to you and say, hey, we want you to, I got this great business plan. And I'm going to buy this thing, and I just need to convert it, and it needs these expenses. We got to get it fixed up, and once I get it fixed up, I'll be able to rent it for this rate, and then we'll be able to define. A bank that's not your lender for that one. A bank wants to see historical lending against the historical cash flow. That's why they always look at the DSCR and the LTV and everything like that, because they limit it. Matter of fact, I know some banks that right now on apartments, 60%. They won't go over 60%. I know a couple banks around here town that only do 40%. All right? Going in cap rate must be above your cost of capital. Not just your interest rate, your cost of capital. Right? Equity is more expensive typically than debt. Right? So if your debt is 8 and you go in at a 6 cap, you're already in a negative, amortizing loan. That's going to be a tough one. You're going to have to fight through that one for a while. Cannot be appreciation play. Just buying it and running it nowadays is not going to work. I honestly don't think that's going to happen any day, because we're just going to hold it and just keep going up and up and up forever. Anybody remember 2008? You guys were all alive then, right? You guys know what that long of road. Okay, financing, whee, fun stuff, right? So, traditional banks, historical lenders looking backwards. They want to know that you've actually got enough money to service the debt. That's all they're really concerned with. They're cash flow lenders. You can use SBA financing with self-storage. That's actually a good thing. The challenge with that is you have less to come in with, 10 or 15%, or maybe even 20% down, which on a commercial property, that's significantly great. That's great. But guess what? You have a higher debt service that you're going to have to maintain. So it's got to be able to service that debt. And SBA will do it on projected values, not on historical values. So a lot of times with the bank financing, we got taxes on one the other day. They've been negative for the last 3 years because they've pushed through so many expenses through this stuff, right? So they're listing. Now, a lot of those expenses that they push through are pure fiction. and but we go to a bank to get the financing on something like that, the bank's going to go, it's not making any money. Well, he made all that stuff up. Oh, good. So he lied on his taxes, is what you're saying? They're not gonna. They're gonna look at SBA is gonna look at your taxes. Banks are gonna look at your taxes. They're required by the Frank Dodd Act to look at them, and if it doesn't show their ability to repay, they can't loan you the money. They can't loan you the money. So, conventional loan, same thing, right? That's bank financing. Is it better? Yes, for long-term financing if it's a long-term asset. Can you get long-term financing if you've owned it for a while, or if the guy that you're buying it from, person you're buying it from, has kept clean books and it's cash flowing? Then you'll be fine. Because part of our business plan is we always want to know who our buyer is when we're going to exit. And we want to know who they are. So we've already identified who the potential buyer is. Is it an institutional buyer? Is it going to be a first-time buyer? Or is it going to be somebody that's going to do an expansion? So we've identified them. So we want to keep clean books because of the fact that if we keep clean books, they'll be able to get bank financing on that deal. And that will bring more value to us in the long term. Yes, we have short-term pain to pay the taxes, but we're going to be able to get better financing. And if you walk in with a better financing deal for somebody, they're going to be willing to pay a little more for it. 7A and 504s are just the two different programs that the SBA has out there. Without getting into the detail of it, 7A, bank loans all the money, gets a guarantee from the SBA. SBA does not loan you the money. The banks do. They get a guarantee. It's like Uncle Vidi. Hey, can you sign for me? Yes. So it gives them more comfort because they have a place to go. Now, their loans are only guaranteed up to 75%. So whatever they loan you, if they loan you $1 million, their guarantee is only 75% of it. But that's better than them having to take the entire risk. So that's why they do it. 504s is two different loans. You end up with a first position loan from the bank at 50%, and then you end up with a second with the CDC. Bridge loans and CMBS and mezzanines. That's usually larger deals. CMBS loans are going to be longer term deals, longer term financing, because the prepayment penalties are pretty onerous. They can be pretty bad. Where you have to pay up to 10 years. Same thing if you go to insurance companies. Great place to get money, cheap money, and it's inexpensive, but you're tied into them for 10 years because they usually do a yield maintenance where you guarantee them 10 years of interest regardless. And that's how you have to, so if you sell it in 5 years and you want out, they're out. All right, hard money, right? Private lenders and stuff like that. Usually pretty expensive and they're usually pretty short term. Very, very, very cautious, especially nowadays because, what's one of the first thing private money lenders always ask? What's my exit? How do I get out of this? I'm not so much concerned of the return on my money as the return of my money. Right? They want to make sure that they have an exit. Hey, I'm going to give you 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, whatever it is, that's what they're going to give you. And they want to get paid off. They don't want to have to extend it. I talked to a hard money lender today, and that was the one on the apartment building. He's extended the thing 3 times. And I talked to another one today, and she's got one that she's extended. She was only supposed to be originally a 12-month loan, and she's 3 years into it now. So what do they want? What are their options? I keep extending it to you, or I foreclose. Well, I don't really want to foreclose because then I got to deal with it, right? So I'll just keep extending it if I have to. Right? Anyway, fun stuff. Alternative funding. These are more of the kind of the creative financing stuff. Private investors, joint ventures, syndications, things of that thing. Seller financing, if you can do it. Biggest challenge with the seller financing is you got to educate the sellers, and they're not always the best, easiest people to work with. Sometimes they're very sophisticated and they're great. Sometimes you get mom and pop. I want cash. I don't care. Right? Oh, you're going to get killed on taxes. Don't care. Right? Anyways, crowdfunding and syndication strategies. That's going to the things. You have to have a track record really to go to crowdfunding spots to get financing on those things. They do a vetting process with you, make sure that you've had a few deals, know what you're doing, and then they don't do it. Syndication strategies, a lot of upfront costs to get started. Anywhere from about $10,000 to $25,000 just to do the paperwork to get the thing put together to get it. So the deal's got to be big enough, and you've got to be able to source the funding. Opportunity zone funding, usually there's a little bit better of rates and terms, or sometimes they have some better financing out there for if it's in an opportunity zone. But what's the problem with the opportunity zone? It's an opportunity zone. Now, you got to keep it for 10 years to get out of the tax benefits, right? And if you go in there, it's going to be usually a blighted area. 4th Street. Anybody ever drove down 4th Street? No? It's an opportunity. Convertible debt. That's a debt to equity. But that's usually much more sophisticated, larger deals. Smaller deals, if it's mom and pop, it's going to be a lot different. Peer-to-peer lending is working with other owners. People just bring in extra equity and stuff like that. Those are much more advanced concepts for financing and stuff like that. Get some advice and help, attorneys, people that know what they're doing. If you go to an attorney to get help and advice, my suggestion is get one that always specializes in that area. Don't get the generalist. We had a generalist do some paperwork for us one time and it wasn't up to snuff. Anyway, maximizing revenues, yay! All right, tenant insurance, I kind of briefly talked about that. All right. Basically, we require it on all the facilities because like I said, it's 10 to 12 bucks. It insures them, their content. Anything goes wrong, they get to deal with the insurance. That insurance company, you don't have to deal with it. There's no conflict between you. They don't come back to threaten to see you. Hey, the roof got tore off in the hurricane and it took everything away. Sorry, call the insurance company, get a collection on it. It rained and leaked. Okay, that's my fault, but, call your insurance company. We don't allow any food in our facilities because it creates mice and stuff like that. It says it specifically in there. So if somebody of the units goes into mice, into somebody else's unit, and they go, hey, there's a bunch of mice in there, they want to make a claim to them, but we don't allow it. We're going like, you're not allowed to have that in there. Truck rentals, moving supplies, U-Haul stuff. Those are extra ways of beefing it up. Selling them supplies, boxes, things of that. Selling them locks. We've looked at the idea of selling locks to them at like $50 and then we'll refund them the lock. And that way if they steal, we don't care because we sold it to them for $50. That's a way of protecting ourselves as well. The truck parking was, I briefly talked about it. It's Truck Parking Club. It's an app. You get on your phone. So a trucker pulls in, hey, I need to park my place for, a couple of days, a week, overnight, whatever. That's gonna be bigger in the future. Matter of fact, I wish I'd have came up with that app idea. Because he does actually own the land. He just gets people like us that put up the land. And then there's a split. Climate control pricing. You bring in the climate control. The thing with the climate control, different customers, different rates of expenses, and different rates of expenses. So yes, you get a higher, income, but you got to really look at it and see because you got to bring in the air conditioning and converting it. I know guys that have converted. You ever heard of the podcast of the Bigger Pockets where they talked about the guy that converted the Kmart yeah, that was here in Reno. I know the guy. It was here in Reno. It's right up there. But converting it and bringing in all the air conditioning and all that stuff and converting it and putting it in the walls and stuff like that, it's very expensive. There's a lot more involved than just, hey, we're going to put up a metal, divider here. It's a lot different. Insurance, administrative fees. We charge a booking fee to start it. We charge them usually about $10 to $15, sometimes $25 extra at the beginning of it, because of the fact that we've got all the time to put it all in, stuff like that. So we're cognizant of that. It's just a way of increasing revenues. The other one I want to talk about on revenues. They now have guys who will help you do an analysis on your property to determine where each unit is, and they charge premiums between each unit for ones that are closer to the gate, that are more convenient, more accessible. So you can actually increase those by $5, $10, $20. So you can actually literally go and have pricing models where each individual unit is priced differently. So if they got to walk further down to put my stuff in, that one's going to be a cheaper unit, and then the one that's closer is more convenient, I'm going to charge more for it. So they actually have, programs that you can work with people nowadays. Technology, run the whole facility from this thing here. Pull up the apps. I can look at all the apps. I can open the gate. I can open the gate to one of my facilities right here on the app. Just click it and open it up. I can pull up the security cameras. So technology's been phenomenal, but you got to still manage it. We got Google Voices phone calls coming in, but you got to look at the routing. So you got to have a service for that, and then you got to have somebody to answer it. Are you going to answer it, or are you going to hire the assistant in the VA, the Philippines, have them answer it, and then making sure it's actually working. So there's actually a lot more involved in the technology. Phenomenal stuff. You don't need to have somebody on site. You do need to have a boots on the ground guy who can go there and change locks, lock it, overlock it, clean stuff up. But we've got a couple of apps down here where we can communicate with him. We use Slack to communicate. Hey, the guy you said it went in today. What time do you go in? There it is. Yeah, I'll pull up here in a second. Oh, yeah. Oh. I went in today at 3 o'clock and I left at 5. So he's there for 2 hours checking it out. On the Slack app to let us know. Self-service kiosks, things like that. you don't necessarily need the kiosks, the big ones anymore. You just need like the goosenecks with the little pen pads so they can plug in their numbers. And you can assign, everybody gets an individual code to get into the facility. So you can assign it. On one of the facilities we own, we offer specials to contractors because we're trying to attract them, and we give them 24-hour access, but they have to sign up as a contractor. So if they want to go in at 11 o'clock, we don't offer that to everybody. We advertise our facility as being limited. We're not 24 hours. So we limit that, but with contractors, we'll give them 24 hours because they need it. So sometimes they need to get there, 5 o'clock in the morning. What time the contractor's usually up, right? Up early in the morning because they want to get working. So that's online nowadays. What does it cost to have a Google business profile? How much do you want to spend on the marketing on that sort of stuff? You have to really manage that stuff. It's phenomenal and great to be able to get people so that they can go to your website or they can get signed up on their phone and drive them as for trafficking. We've got a 2-step process as opposed to before. We're looking at the 2-step process as before it was taking 7 or 8 steps to get them to rent a unit. And now we've got it scaled down, but that's costing us money to get that marketing and that operations management system in place. And it's more of a marketing piece. Smart locks. Nowadays they have locks. I should have brought it. They actually put it on there and it's a Bluetooth. So when their phone walks up, they actually get a code right there and it unlocks the phone or it unlocks the lock. So the good thing is if they haven't paid, they walk up, it says you haven't paid. You can't open it. So you got to pay, and then they send them a text right then. Then it pops up. They can pay the text. They can pay right then, and then they'll open it up. So there's a cost to that technology, but it's we're getting there. It's moving fast. Automatic billing. We don't take cash. We do not take cash, from any of our facilities because I noticed that when they collect it and it gets to the bank, it's different amounts. I'm not sure how that happens, but but it does. We don't take cash. We don't take checks anymore. We do still take a couple of checks from a couple of people, but those are the one-offs. We don't want them. And then if somebody calls up and they go past the billing date and it doesn't go through, hey, it didn't go through. We need to update your card. And you can update the card fairly quickly. So trends. Once again, there is a lot of going on. Yes, sir.
We just do credit cards or debit cards?
Credit cards, debit cards, doesn't matter. We don't take American Express, Discover, because of the fact that their processing costs are higher and then you have to go through. And a lot of times you're tied in with whoever your management systems are. There's a couple of big ones, Storable, Storage, Easy Self-Storage, those are big ones. A lot of smaller ones, iTenant, and a lot of newer ones coming out. But a lot of times you're tied in with that management company. Whoever the management system you're using, they tie you in. That's how they make extra money on the back end for that. Okay. So whoever you're tied in with is the way they. And then it's usually 2 to 3%. We don't try to charge them on that sort of stuff. Let me see. Oh yeah, we're good. So we don't pass that. The other thing is web pages. A lot of times when you're dealing with the management software systems, they give you a free web page, which you can do some adaptations, but it's not really good for your business Google profile. Because not only do they give it to you, they give it to you and 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 you. And everybody's got the same thing. So the way Google reads the back end and the links and everything like that, and when they change the algorithms, your ranking may be completely out the door. So, and nowadays, 80-90% of your market starts on the internet. So you got to be out there, be adjusting for that all the time. There's things you can do. Facebook, tie it together, link them. Tie it together with LinkedIn, Facebook, all the different social media accounts. It helps, not as much as it used to, because they change it all the time. Nowadays, Google business profiles are key, because Google is faithful. They're doing a drive to smaller niche areas and smaller businesses. So they're looking to get that. So they want to make sure you have your Google business profile up to date. Make sure it's up to date and it's got links in it nowadays. So even if for your regular business, if you got it, when we buy them, we always look at expansion potential. Yes, there is. So you buy a property, it's got 5 acres attached to it. You look at building onto that or just leasing it out to RVs. Solar panels, green buildings and all that stuff. The trends with that is you can put solar panels on your roofs. So if you overproduce, you can sell it back to them, but make sure you check with the local utilities to figure that out. Everyone's different, every state's different, and it all depends on when you sell it. California, they used to pay you back. Now they don't even pay you back, they give you credits. Nevada's going the same direction. Oh, we're gonna pay you, don't worry. It's not gonna go on forever, people. It won't, trust me. Avoiding common mistakes. Know the market. Know your market. It's 3 to 5 miles for most facilities. So really look at the demographics, look at the psychographics, look at that sort of stuff. Overestimating demand in certain markets. Once again, that goes back to the pro forma. Right? Oh, you'll be able to lease this up no time at all at $100 a square foot or $100 extra for a thing. Underestimating maintenance cost. Oh, do I got to put a fence in? We put in fencing on one of our facility, cost us $10,000. The original quote to do the whole thing with gates and everything like it was $30,000, and that's a small deal. That was a small one. So gates and maintenance and all that stuff. Maintenance they get broken into, and then I should actually add underneath that underestimating your marketing expenses, because marketing expenses can be very, very, when you're trying to lease up, it can be very expensive because it's an investment. So sometimes you run an ad, or you buy Google ads, or you buy Barefoot or something like that. How much does it cost you per tenant to bring them in? Is it $50 a tenant, or is it $250 a tenant to bring in a tenant? So you really want to understand those numbers too. And local zoning and permitting things. Some places have already limited your ability to develop. Even though you have a facility and you can expand, they're still saying no. Oh, the other one for income, we've actually talked with a number of billboard companies because we've got some that are really good. But they're also limited on what they can do. They can't put any more up. So, major expenses, that was the ones. 2 major expenses you have to look at, period. You have to look at, because you have no control over them whatsoever. Minor control, but for the most part, very little. Property taxes. Know what they are. Every city, every county is different. Tennessee, they reassess every 5 years. Wonderful. But when they reassess, they're going to do it on the market value. Texas, every year. They actually have people there that their own business every year. They got a regular tax abatement where they go in there and fight taxes every year on the assessments. So, because every year they reassess and they do it because there's no state income tax. It's all done on property taxes. And you can have, in certain cities, Dallas specifically, you have city tax, state tax, and county tax. Yeah, so you can have you can have all 3. So you got to watch out for that sort of stuff. So understand, go in there, look at the thing, call them if you have to, and they'll tell you. Insurance cost. Anybody had their insurance go up in the last year? Yeah, we were dealing with insurance this week. And so the cost, insurance, we were getting quotes all over the place. We got a quote for $12,000 for one, for less coverage than another one we got for, and it was less price, but more coverage. Which one do you think we went with? But I mean, literally looking at insurance, and in certain areas, Florida. They're looking at the age of the roofs. They want to know the age of the roof, age of the buildings. Nowadays with the technology, right, they can go look at this stuff. So they can look on Google Maps, they can look at all the different things, and they can see. We had a guy come out and inspect it, and hey, you don't have a fire extinguisher. It's concrete block. The building's all concrete block. It's not going to burn. If it does burn, it's going to be damn hot, and we're going to lose everything, right? They still wanted a fire extinguisher. Had to buy a fire extinguisher. Negotiating favorable tax rates, fight with them, risk mitigation strategies, lower insurance. Get the loss reports for the last few years from the person that bought it. Did they have a lot of reports? Did they have a lot of claims, or did they have none? Because the insurance companies are going to want that from you. It's a loss report. And they'll know what it is. So that what they can do is look at that. Security, cameras, having all that stuff. The more you have it, the better they like it. Don't be open for 24 hours. They don't like that. Utilizing cost segregation. That's more tax benefits where you're writing off the stuff so that you can actually, you shorten your depreciation on your expenses, basically what happens. And so it actually benefits you because it shows you don't have to pay as much in taxes. Is it 54? Oh, 50, okay. There we go. Key takeaways. you know, there's a lot of opportunities there. Make sure you study the market, learn about it and stuff like that. You can start with smaller facilities, do that. Questions, comments, commentary? No? That's my, oh, there it is. Oh, that was a facility we were looking at. That's my contact information. You ever have any questions, by all means, by all means reach out. We'd love to chat with you, explain to you. Or here, I'll get in front of it. That was in a later. All right. How was it?
Great.
Good information?
Thank